welcoming everyone to Want Regional Center Flexibility, Try Tailored Day Services. This is a presentation of Connections California, which is Parents Helping Parents, one of their newest programs. I'm Alyssa DeFilippo. I manage the program. We've created a statewide hub of resources and information in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese to assist families with young adults with any disability as they transition to adulthood, and also with adult services. We contain live events like the one this evening, and an e-learning library, and several curated resources on all topics around transition to adulthood and adult services. We are very grateful for the support from Santa Clara Family Health Plan to enable us to bring you presentations like this evening and to have Connections California. So joining us this evening to explain Tailored Day Services and recent policy changes to Tailored Day Service options are Jim Knight, who is Deputy Director of Administration Division at the California Department of Developmental Services. And as you're probably aware, since you're here at this presentation, that the California Department of Developmental Services, or DDS, works to ensure Californians with developmental disabilities have the opportunity to make choices and lead independent, productive lives as members of their communities in the least restrictive setting possible. And supporting Jim tonight, and also our other presenter, will be Leslie Chapman, also from DDS. And joining us from the Kern Regional Center is Jamie Patino. Regional centers are nonprofit private corporations that contract with TDS to provide and coordinate services and supports for individuals with developmental disabilities. They have offices throughout California, and Kern Regional Center serves 10,000 clients in Kern, Inyo, and Mono counties. Jamie is the client employment specialist and day program liaison. She's been with Kern for over 2 years and works with regional center consumers and vendors to promote and embrace all that is possible for regional center consumers through TDS. So I am going to turn it over to Jim Knight now to discuss Tailored Day Services and the recent policy changes.
Thanks, Alyssa, and really appreciate the invitation to be here. As Alyssa talked about, this Tailored Day, some flexibility, we talk about these words, and so wanted to go through at a high level kind of what Tailored Day Services really is and what the idea behind it was, and then turn it over to Jamie to give a little more specifics about some of the things that she's seen from the regional center perspective as well. So when we talk about Tailored Day Service, as the name would suggest, and we'll get a little bit more in detail, it really is the opportunity for folks to design a service that really meets their individualized needs. So as this slide says, that this service can be used in addition to or instead of the services that are listed here. And one of the things that's important about to point out about these services, as you probably know, in general, these services are provided in more group settings, whether they be small groups, sometimes a little bit larger. And so it does make it at times a little bit more difficult to individualize those types of services. And so when we talk about Tailored Day, it does give that option to really make it very specific for that person, because it's going to be, as we'll talk about here in a minute, it's designed by that person. These services here are generally, especially for the day services or what's called a lookalike day service, that's a design, that service is really put together by the provider in what's called a program design. And then, so there's some limitations about kind of the different flexibilities that can be provided within that program design. However, with this tailored service, the individual really has the flexibility to design that how they want it to be provided. So as we move on to the next slide, some of the things, so what does that mean when we talk about Tailored Day? And so what are the options that folks can have? And so it really does, as it says, I mentioned before, you get to really choose and customize those services that you want to do. And it also gets to, folks get to direct that. So instead of kind of fitting within, say, a program design that's done by a provider, you really get to develop your own. It can be to help with work, as it says here, a paid internship program. Maybe you want some help in pursuing secondary education or the like. really there's many opportunities that can be done, but the ultimate goal, as it says on the end, is to increase folks' ability to be in integrated and inclusive lives. So really trying to give people the opportunity to identify specifically what supports they need and do it in an individualized basis. So I mentioned a service design. And so that's when we say an individual service design, that's developed by the person who wants to receive that service. They can get some help doing that, but really it is driven by that person. And going through it says IPP, so individual program plan, through person-centered planning. So again, centered on that individual and what that person's goals are and what it is that they're trying to do. And then through the regional center. So this is done in conjunction with a provider of one of those earlier services. When we talk about day services in particular, what is often happens is that I may be receiving services from a day program now, but I want to do a tailored day option, something that's more individualized. So I can work with that provider, or maybe it's another provider, to say, hey, I want to go through and develop a service design for me. Can you as a provider help me with some support to do that? And so we develop this design, add it to the individual program plan, essentially go through the regional center, and then I can get started with that service, my quote tailored day service. So go a little bit more in detail as we go into these next slides. So that individualized service design. So what that means, got a couple of things here about the flexibility. So that could be fewer days or hours than in a typical day service. Could be at different times of day, could be on weekends. I mean, really the options are there for folks to really set things up how they want it to be. It says here flexibility in the locations, doesn't necessarily have to be in the same place, can be done remotely. You can also, a lot of the day services now are kind of they'll work for certain times of the day, but you may want to do services just for a couple of hours a day, or just a couple days a week doing this kind of tailored day service, but then maybe do more of the regular type of day service on the other days. That's fine too. This gives you the opportunity to design how you want those services to be delivered and what works best for you. So on the next slide, so as I talked about earlier, one back. There we go. So what are the types of things that can be done? Like I said, it can be about employment, whether that be paid employment, want to work in some volunteer opportunities, education, paid internship program for those that may not be familiar. So that's a relatively new opportunity where the regional center can actually pay for the wages for someone to actually in an employment setting. So it's more of a trial setting. So that really does encourage and gives some incentives for employers to try out an employee, if you will, without the financial investment for a time limited. But with this service, tailored day service, you can really go and try and do some more kind of recruiting for that, exploring what some of those opportunities may be, whether they be in like I said, a direct hire, internship, school, or in volunteer. Really, as I said before, trying to increase folks' ability to be part of that community in a more individualized way. So going to the next slide, then we'll talk about some of the changes that Alyssa mentioned. So this is not a new service. It's been around since, I believe, around 2009. But back in 2009, it was developed as an either or. So either you try a tailored day setting or a regular day as those other services. You couldn't do both. Now you can do both tailored day on some days. you can do other day services or work activity programs on other days. The other thing was that when it was initially, and when I say now, starting in 2022, that changed. When Taylor Day first came into, when it first started, it had to cost less. This was it was developed during the time when the budget in California was not doing so well. And so one of the requirements was that it had to cost less. Taylor Day had to cost less than the day or work service that was provided before. That's no longer a requirement. And so as it says in that separate section there, that we did establish rates, and there's a link there. And I believe this will be going out so that folks can have that and get to where the rates are if you're interested in that. So there isn't the requirement anymore for this to cost less than the day service that someone was using before, which really is an important component of that. I know that, you know, money isn't always the most fun thing to talk about, but now, you know, but it was a requirement before. It isn't now. And it does increase the flexibility for folks to get a better mix of services, instead of really what the requirements were before forced you into a one or the other decision. Either I'm going to get all my day services through this tailored option, or all services through the kind of typical day or work activity program. So that choice does not have to be made any longer. So that's good. And as it says here, the total monthly hours of tailored day service are going to be, it's a maximum on average of 4 hours a day. So it doesn't mean that you can only get services 4 hour a day. It's just on average 4 hours a day. So one day could be 1, another day could be 5 or 6. Again, there's flexibility within that. So that's kind of the high level, kind of from the policy. And again, we'll have some time for questions here at the end. But on the next slide, talking about here, we do have an email address there. It's ratesquestions@dds.ca.gov for information if there's any that don't get addressed tonight, or any other questions about Taylor Day or other services. This is a good email address that folks could use. And so at this point then, as Alyssa mentioned, we also have Jamie Patino here from Kern Regional Center, and I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to talk about some of her experiences.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie Patino, and Leslie is actually going to share my PowerPoint. I was really happy to have her help me out tonight, because usually when I'm talking and doing PowerPoint, it doesn't work out too well. So, and I already see, Jim, there's some Q&A coming in, so that's good. People are wanting to hear the information, that's for sure. So again, my name is Jamie Patino. I'm from Kern Regional Center in the town of Bakersfield, but we serve a very expansive area from East Kern, Ridgecrest area to Inyo-Mono County, which is really snowed in right now. And I've been with Regional Center for just a little over 3 years. I know she mentioned earlier too, but I was almost approaching my 3 years. So when I first started with Regional Center, I was familiar with, you know, a lot of the day program services. But one thing that I was not familiar with was this notion of Taylor Day service, this Taylor Day service. And so, you know, I went around my new department, my new coworkers, to try and figure out, you know, if I could get a little bit more information about this. And, you know, I was kind of told, well, dig around, you will find. So I made it my business from that day on to find out everything there was to know about Taylor Day services. And this was prior to, you know, the flexibilities being added into Taylor Day this last year. So back to who I am. I am the day program liaison, and I'm also the employment specialist here at Kern Regional Center. So I get a lot of questions about day programs, and then of course lots and lots of questions about employment services, what kind of services we have. And Tailored Day really does seem to be such a great melting pot for all those things that individuals are looking for these days. You know, those sort of, as Jim pointed out earlier, those customized services, things that are just different from maybe just the average day program, things that they can just take are their own individual goals and really tailoring this service around them trying to meet their own individual goals. Okay, next slide, Leslie. So part of my role is to support our vendors who do Tailored Day services and to bring new vendors on that have not done Tailored Day services before. And also, which is an everyday training session, I call it, is all of our employees, all service coordinators, making sure that they're educated on exactly what Tailored Day services is and how it can be used. And a lot of times, you know, even when I start explaining this to service coordinators, you know, until I just give those like really basic examples of how other people have used this, you know, some of those examples just really helps to shed a light on, hey, you know, as they're listening to their individuals talk and some of their dreams and some of their hopes and some of their goals, you know, how this Tailored Day services could really maybe fit into that. So I always keep as my foundation whenever I'm talking to folks about Tailored Day services, that increased integration and inclusion, any kind of further development or maintaining of employment or volunteer opportunities, and then pursuing that secondary education. And then anything that might fit into those three areas really could potentially be something that Tailored Day services could help support an individual who is not sure if that goal fits into that. Let's take a look at it. Let's see if that could maybe be something that would be a perfect fit for what they're wanting to do and the goals that they have. But basically, as far as working with the vendors, you know, I work with them to help create their program design, just basically to help them better understand, you know, what Tailored Day services could be, because really there are just so many different ways that I've seen it used and individuals have used it. So I know that, you know, it could, you know, there's just a lot that can be done with it. And I provide them with the needed information to develop a solid service in order to help them discover and embrace all that can be possible with Tailored Day. Next slide. Again, oh, same slide. Okay. And then of course I mentioned earlier, educating the service coordinators, because, you know, the only way that we're going to get the information about the services out there, you know, obviously, you know, having all of you here tonight learning about the service is one way, but having those service coordinators that are educated on what the service is and how individuals are using it to customize it for their very own needs. And again, as we mentioned, as Jim mentioned earlier, this is developed through the person-centered planning process. And so it is really critical that our service coordinators are educated. And with the new changes that have been rolled out and the different enhancements, we have, decided to sort of roll back out the information about tailored day services through our new hire orientation, through staff meetings and presentations. And then like even next month, we have our Kern High School District is having a transition fair. So we're going to be there, talking about the different types of services we have at Regional Center and focusing too on that Taylor Day option. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about how some of our folks have used this option. So we've had individuals using it for some of the pre-employment skills training, maybe literacy, comprehension, resume creation, and revision assistance to include interview preparation, on-the-job training through personal job coach, offering customized training and flexible schedules through the Taylor Day services, job development through the PIP program. I know Jim had mentioned that earlier, and I think I saw, in the Q&A, there was a question about, getting some job training. And I think that the PIP program, the paid internship program, is a great opportunity for individuals to get that job training, to have that real world experience working at a place of business and getting that paid paycheck at the same time. And he mentioned the PIP, but I want to just throw in a couple more things that those that do decide that they want to do that internship program, that is an opportunity for them to utilize 1,040 hours, but no more than 12 months. He mentioned it was time limited, and that is the time limit on it. So 1,040 hours and no more than 12 months. But that really comes out to, if you calculate it out, to about 20 hours of paid work each month. Sorry, got a little ahead of myself there. Each week. So 20 hours a week of paid work. So that is one area that a lot of our individuals use those Taylor Day hours to help them get prepped, ready to go out there, ready to develop an internship. They also utilize it for, getting ready as they're starting to build their plan for employment. Part of that plan is transportation. How am I going to get to and from work? And some folks have used the Taylor Day option to help them put together a transportation plan. Maybe it's, figuring out the best bus routes, or figuring out any type of other transportation that is out there. We've had some pretty creative supports in this area, as far as, the Taylor Day staff assisting with, helping them learn how to use the apps on the phone. I mean, everything is digital these days, and everything is an app these days. So, trying to get all that figured out is very important, because getting to and from work is the big part of it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I've had individuals use it for post-secondary education. This is a really popular choice here in Bakersfield, is our Bakersfield Junior College. And so utilizing the supports of Taylor Day services. So I've seen them use the hours of their staff to help support them through the application process, through setting up their college accounts, helping them, figure out how to get to the financial aid office, how to apply for that, how to access the DSPS, the Disabled Students Program, for any possible accommodations. So all this, being a new student on campus and having to navigate it all, these are things where the Tailored Day staff could help with whatever the needs are to support that process. And transportation back and forth to campus, helping them figure out how they're going to do that, maybe figuring out that bus schedule to and from campus, and just, helping them figure, accessing their new advisor out there at the junior college. There's just a lot of different things, a lot of different areas to navigate. And this is a piece where the Tailored Day service hours can help assist with the supports in these areas. Let's see, as far as the enhancements and flexibilities that Jim really covered in a lot of detail, they're able to do more hours. I know before, with how Tailored Day was prior to this, it was very limited hours, and now they're really able to use more days or hours to really truly meet their needs. And they can also use it in conjunction with another program, like, those folks that are doing day programs, if they decide that, like, I have individuals who, maybe on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, they're still wanting to attend their regular day program, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they're wanting to utilize this Tailored Day option so that they can maybe go out and discover if they are wanting to take classes at the junior college, or maybe they're wanting to go out and job search, and they need those supports to help move them in that direction. So all those things are now possible with some of the new flexibilities of Tailored Days. So so many more needs can be met through this greater flexibility. And thank you, Leslie, for helping me out with that. Okay. There she is.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Sorry, I was having a little technical difficulty
okay.
there. So while I drop in these evaluations into the chat to everyone, I want to thank both Jamie and Jim for their information on Tailored Day services. And I'd just like to take a minute for folks to please hit the link in the chat. As I said, there are only 3 questions. If you could start filling them out now, that would be great. And I am going to ask Jim, we have lots of questions coming in. And there seem to be questions around age limits, either for Jim or Jamie, minimum or maximum, and how a TDS may or may not be used with either post-secondary education or a high school student. So I think there's some confusion around the program in general and who would be eligible for it.
Yeah, so in general, this is it's for adults. So it really is an option for, like I said, instead of or in combination with a day service. It would often referred to as adult day programs and supported employment and those types of things. So this is, in general, we're looking at folks that are 18 and over. And the second part of the question about education.
Yeah, how it might be used in conjunction with a post-secondary program. Now, that could be a community college, that might be a transition program in a school, but then they wouldn't be getting regional center services yet. So just a little bit of an explanation around that.
Jamie, do you have an answer on that one? I could speak generally, but.
Yeah, usually all of the individuals that are utilizing this service have either had their certificate of completion or have graduated from high school, and all of the post-secondary education students that we have utilized tailored day services have all utilized it for the junior college level. So I think it was mainly to be focused, like Jim mentioned, for those adults that have already exited the high school education area.
Okay, thanks. There's also some confusion around TDS and the self-determination program, SDP. I think some folks are getting to know what SDP is. So there are questions about, can you have a TDS with an SDP? You know, what's the difference? Can we have both at the same time?
You know, we love our acronyms, don't we? So when you're talking about self-determination in just broadly, just in case, so that really is where someone is directing everyone. You are, as folks would say, in charge. So you don't have to work with quote vendor providers. Get to choose everyone. You can actually hire them or work with another agency who does the hiring. And so within that program, you can do this without calling it tailored day. So you get to design everything within that in self-determination. This tailored day, when we're talking about that specifically, is really, it is an option, gives some folks some flexibility within the other part, or what some folks would call the traditional system that are within regional centers. So again, tailored day is, it's an option, I guess you would call it, within self-determination, but it's not called tailored day. It's just self-determination really gives the flexibility for everything.
I think once I asked you, Jim, so self-determination is like one big TDS.
Right.
That's a good way of describing
yes.
it. Yeah.
So there are also several questions about the person-centered planning and who would pay for the plan to develop for a tailored day services, and who would you get to do it? And would a parent be able to be either a person-centered planner for a regional center client?
Yeah, and so, and this may be kind of getting into some of the self-determination questions as well too. So I'm going to answer it in the form of self-determination first. So there are specific guidelines around for folks who are wanting to take advantage of self-determination that can get some assistance in developing a person-centered plan or doing some planning and assistance there. With tailored day services, if someone needs some assistance in kind of helping to determine what their service design may be like, they can work with the regional center on what options may be for that. But it would not necessarily be considered a quote person-centered plan. It'd be more specific towards that service and developing that service design. But still, when we say person-centered in both the law and the guidance and what I talked about today, it really, however that service design is developed, it has to be through that person in a person-centered way. That may not be a quote full-blown person-centered plan. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think there was some confusion around that. I think people were thinking you need a person-centered plan to have tailored day services, which is not the case. You don't even need a person-centered plan to be in the self-determination program, but this is about tailored day services, not self-determination.
Right.
I just wanted to get rid of some of the confusion. So there are also questions about what if folks don't want to focus on employment or pre-employment skills during use the TDS for that? Can they use them for something else? for some kind of community involvement or volunteer work or whatever they might want to use? Does it have to be education or education?
So
Or employment?
no, it does not have to be. And so one of the in the slides there, it talked about increasing person's ability to lead an integrated or inclusive life, which really is a pretty big catch-all. So
It really is.
yeah, so one of the things, one of the kind of the benefits of being broad, but also is that it doesn't limit folks in what the requirements are and what this can be. So we really tried to, I think, purposely leave it open so that folks could individualize this for what it is that they need.
Okay, thanks. So there are also a bunch of questions about the 4 hour a day, 20 hour a week. Can it be, 2 8-hour days and not have to be 4 hours a day? And how could they also include their day program within their same day?
Yeah, there is a lot of questions on that. So it is an average of 4 hours a day. So let's just say in a month, you want to schedule, let's say it's going to be 10 days of tailored day. So that means within the month, you have 40 hours to play with. That can be in one hour day, 10-hour day, however you want to design it, but it becomes 40 hours based on that 10 total days, 4 times 10. In general, those days cannot be the same day as a traditional day service. There are limited situations where if folks are working to transition from a work activity program, excuse me, then that work activity program and the tailored day can be done on the same day. But for the most part, they're going to be separate days. It's either doing tailored day or you're accessing the regular or traditional day service.
Okay, thanks. Beatrice, may I ask you to just take a look at the chat? There is a question in Spanish, and if you're able to translate it and put it back in the chat, then I can read it. Thanks. We'll go on, but I'll keep looking at the chat. I think that Jamie did cover some examples of other programs that could be in conjunction with a tailored day program. Some scenarios. I think people might feel comfortable with that now. Again, lots more about minimum age. There are a couple of questions about staff. Can TDS staff only be a regional center vendor, or can the client pick who they would like to accompany the client to any work opportunity?
So the service has to be provided through a regional center vendor. That doesn't mean that folks can't choose their staff. So both things can be true at the same time. Would that be a fair statement, Jamie?
Yeah, I would say that's a fair statement. I think through, the matching process, as far as, our vendors, they really do try and, to the best of their ability, let the individuals sort of, decide who might be a good fit for them as far as staff that's working for them and working with them. So I would say that that's pretty accurate, Jim.
Okay. Yeah, more about hours, TDS, SDP. How does TDS affect respite hours or any other regional center services? And then they also threw IHSS in there, which is not a regional center service. But how would it affect any other services? I guess respite thrown in there.
Yeah, so for respite, IHSS, I mean, there's not an impact there. It's a different service, meeting a different need. The potential, on the day services that, if, as we talked about before, that those services can't be provided on the same day by and large, that may reduce the the number of days of traditional day service, but all the other services shouldn't be impacted.
Okay, and again, I think there's confusion around TDS and self-determination program because people are asking, what does the regional center pay for under TDS? The staff aid, their mileage, what other things? And if you're using a vendor, then the vendor is actually the one who's dealing with the wages, and if they have mileage, if they have their phone paid for, whatever it might be. Is that right, Jim?
That's correct. Yeah. And so and I know, I think there was something about the rates and anything too, so I'll jump into that. So the rates for the service are set, and I know you said you were going to send out the PowerPoint later, and folks really want to get into that, but they vary a little bit by regional center, but they're all over $40 an hour. So within that $40 an hour that's paid to the vendor would be wages, taxes, other costs that go along with providing that service.
I'm going to put another plug in if folks can just go back to the chat and answer those questions. I used to kind of wait. I used to try and have everybody be quiet and just wait until people filled it out. But we have about 25% folks have filled out those evaluations. So if you could just go back to the chat, click on it if it's Spanish or English, and help us get it up to at least 50% of participation, that would be wonderful. Thanks. I do want to move along with the questions. So again, I think that we're clear that you don't have a person-centered plan necessarily to develop tailored day services. We have a few questions about that. I think Jim definitely helped that. How long can you stay in a TDS? Months, years?
Yeah, there's not a time limit set on it. So it's really based on the individual's needs and preferences.
We got that one. Okay, lots of confusion. In a way, this is good because it means that the SDP is getting out there and people have a lot of questions on it. And, PHP did do an overview orientation of self-determination program, and there's a parent panel coming up on March 25th. It's a Saturday morning, and if folks are interested in SDP, maybe you might want to go to the site. I'll drop the link in the chat, and maybe get some of your SDP questions answered there. But I'm going to try and keep the questions to TDS, since that's what we're here for. Is there a max hour limit per day for TDS?
No, not per day. It's just, again, it's that average of 4 hours per day.
Well, but perhaps the vendor might have some kind of max with overtime.
They may, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's nothing in the law that says that you can't do more than X number of hours in a day.
Okay, so say someone wants a job in coding, and most regional center vendors do not have qualified staff to help with interview prep, etc. Rather, can we get a more qualified person on the open market who's not a regional center vendor? How to proceed?
Coding, maybe like computer coding or something.
Yes,
along those
yeah,
lines. Yeah.
I think that's what that means.
Yeah. Some thoughts on that one, Jamie?
Well, I mean, if they're interested in hiring their own qualified staff, I mean, if it's not something that maybe one of the vendors could do a search for and bring somebody in for that, and if they don't have any luck with that, then maybe that we're back to that self-determination. Maybe that might be an avenue for them to look into, to have that ability to find and hire their own staff. I don't know if that meets the answer of what they're looking for. But I would say for my own vendors, I know that if there was a need for a self-determining, I mean, for now I'm doing it. If there was a need for a Taylor Day staff, that was a very specific sort of criteria. I definitely know they would, do their best to try and, bring somebody aboard that might be able to help with that. I'm not sure that they would, I can't guarantee that they would have any success with that, but, I definitely know that a lot of them would try.
Yeah, but just to be clear, if Taylor Day Services is under a traditional service that regional centers provide. Self-determination program is not a traditional service. It's its own program. And if you do apply to, if your regional center consumer applies to go into self-determination, they're going to be leaving the traditional service world and going into the self-determined world. Sometimes it works for folks, sometimes it doesn't. There is more freedom because you don't have to have staff who are vendorized, but with TDS, you do need to have staff who are vendorized. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have a really great relationship with your service coordinator, with your IPP team, and you have this person and you say, this is a great person, can this vendor who we'd like to use, maybe the vendor could hire that person. I mean, anything is possible, right?
Right.
But just so that folks understand out there, SDP is separate from TDS. SDP gives you the freedom to hire people who are not vendored. TDS does not. Okay. How about DOR? If you're a DOR client, can you also get TDS at the same time that you're getting DOR, say either student services or support employment?
Oh, so if DOR is funding those services,
Yes.
that's
an interesting one.
That's a good question. We're gonna have to get back with you on that one.
Okay.
That is a great question, actually.
When I get the answer, I will send it out to everyone who attended, because that is interesting, because DOR could be funding, it could be an overlap in the services, and so then you wouldn't have the two income streams funding the same service.
Yep.
There's a question about tax filing restrictions, and I'm just going to answer for Jamie and Jim and say they're not tax accountants, they're not tax attorneys, and they're probably not going to answer that question. It's about filing, start earnings such as filing together. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to touch that one. Sorry. Yes, we know the Bay Area has TDS vendors and there's a huge wait list. Any suggestions?
Well, part of it, and Jamie, you may want to add on to this too, is, I mean, it's not specific just to this service system. It's finding people to work and finding folks to support. And when this is a good thing, it's more individualized. It's great. You need people to provide the support, and it creates a bigger need for folks that can actually provide that support. Jamie, if you want to add on anything to that, but I think that's probably the main issue that providers are having right now.
Yeah, it's across all areas.
So if going back to one of the earlier questions, if you know someone who can provide that coding support and that provider wants to support you in your tailored day service, bring the two together.
Connect them. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I know I can be annoying about this, but please, if you could just fill out those evaluations. The more evaluations we get, the more we can prove that we're providing a good service, the more likely we'll be able to continue bringing you presentations like this evening. So please, there aren't too many things in the chat. I think it's one of the last ones. Go back up there, click on English. You'll see it's only 3 little questions, 3 questions, English and Spanish. Thanks. I think we established that you probably can't have a TDS while you're still in either a post-secondary program or in school, right? There was a question about that. So I just want to repeat that so people know it. A lot more about certificate of completion and TDS, a lot about TDS and PCP. Does anybody see anything else maybe that I have not covered? I think we've touched on everything of all these questions, but if somebody's out there and you have another question that you don't think we have touched on, please go ahead and write the question again. Somebody was asking if their child is in, their young adult is in DOR supported employment, when that decreases from 100% to 60%, can they use TDS hours to fill in for that support if they still need support? So that's a little bit more of a focused question about, can you use DOR with TDS at the same time?
Yeah, and by the way, I did see another question. Someone asked, what is DOR? So it's
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we love our acronyms
Yes.
again. So it's Department of Rehabilitation, where in some cases, folks who receive regional center services, some of their employment supports could be funded through that department rather than through the regional centers. But I think that's the question that you just asked, Alyssa, is kind of in line with the earlier question of how does Taylor Day work when there is the service is being funded by a Department of Rehabilitation, and we will get back to folks on that one.
Yeah, and I would think that maybe what they're saying is that as that job coach with supported employment goes away and goes away and goes away, if they're entirely gone, and the really regional center consumers still need support within their employment, can you have a TDS to support that person as job coach when DOR is totally gone? And I would think the answer to that is
yes. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
the regional center can, whether it's through Taylor Day, support employee, whatever. I mean, the regional center can fund those supports. Yeah.
Right. But I think where the concern, what Jim wants to do a little bit of research on, is that overlap. So
Right.
if you're going from 100% of the job coach through supported employment at Department of Rehab Service, and you're going to 50%, but you still have that person there part of the time, that's a little bit of the sticky widget. So you just
Yes.
you have those overlapping services. Okay. I'm just going to put the DOR link and answer that question, but okay. So again, just an STP question. If you haven't transferred over, you're still in traditional services. So if you're on the wait list for FMS, you're still in traditional services, but you should talk to your service coordinator about how to get services while you're in this waiting period for the financial management service, which is what FMS is.
So there is one in here, Alyssa, if you don't mind, and Jamie, maybe you can help out with this. Just how do you get started? You've heard about this. How should someone get started, Jamie? I mean, who would be the best person to start with that conversation?
The best person really to reach out to is the service coordinator. That way they can let them know what vendors offer this service. That way they can start engaging with the different vendors and see who they want to to do the Taylor Day hours. So I would say typically always start with the service coordinator, letting them know that you're very interested in putting together some Taylor Day services for yourself, and what vendors out there offer the Taylor Day services, and then being able to choose who you would like to get your supports from, who you would like to work with.
And so I think one of the things here too was that was part of the question was, hey, maybe the service coordinator might not be familiar with it, which is possible. There's a lot of new things coming down. So I guess what another option could be then, that if you're already receiving a day service, talk with that provider. Tell them that, hey, you're interested in this. And so get that provider involved, and then they can work with the regional center in conjunction with you as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, someone's just asking about distance requirements. How far can someone go with a TDS? Can you go out of county, I guess, would be one of the questions.
Well, again, that's going to be the agreement then that's between you and the provider.
Yeah. And I guess regional centers too. I mean, each regional center does things a little differently, right? Well, or is that more a provider?
That's
That's
going to
more of
be
the
on
vendor?
the provider area. Yeah.
Okay. And, someone is in SDP and is told they could use TDS services and pay with their SDP budget. So I think you might just want to clarify all that with your service coordinator and maybe your participant choice specialist at your regional center.
Yeah. It's a good.
I think we covered everything unless someone has one last burning question. It's 7:28 and I want to be true to my word and see if we can actually do this. I'm going to check how many people. We have about 50%.
Did you get the question back from the interpreter?
Oh, yes, it was it was about
Okay.
how can my son participate in the self-determination program.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget that one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, and on that one, Alyssa, we do have someone else listening online who's going to reach out and gave some information on that already. So to the person who requested.
the
Yeah.
self-determination program.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. I was saying just to ask your service coordinator because that is the first stop with
Yep.
self-determination. But I want to thank both Jamie and Jim for coming this evening and presenting. Obviously, lots of questions around here. Obviously, I'm hearing loud and clear we need to present more on SDP so people understand the differences. I want to thank Beatrice and Leslie for helping with the behind the scenes. Thank you so much for volunteering your time. I really appreciate it. And Beatrice, as always, for helping with our Spanish speakers. Lots of people saying thank you. They've learned a lot, good information. Okay. No, there's not a list of vendors for TDS. All right, we still have some confusion out there. We'll maybe do a little e-packet on the differences between TDS and SDP, as that said.
Yeah, I think that'd be beneficial. Happy to help.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I appreciate your time again to our presenters and to our support staff. We'll see you next time. Thanks again. Take care.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Sure. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.